Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay, so this is going to be just a brief video moving forward with this particular book, An Era of Darkness, The British Rule in India, by Dr. Shashi Tharoor. And in this video, I'm going to discuss two things mostly. The one thing is some of the basic statistics about the global GDP share of India before the British rule in India and after when British left. And the second point I would like to discuss more in this is the some of the details of the East India Company. Okay, so starting off, we are going to start with some basic statistics, which were calculated and demonstrated by a British economic historian, Angus Madison. Okay, so he calculated all these figures, these percentages that I'm going to quote later on. In the 20th century, he calculated all of them. The first point is that India's share of world GDP was 23% at the beginning of 18th century, and which was equal to all of Europe's combined share at that time. And the second point is before that, before 18th century, at just the start of, you can say, 18th century, or just at the end of 17th century, in the year 1700, it is that particular year for which this percentage is calculated. It was 27% GDP of India had a GDP of 27% of the total global share at that point in time, when Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb's treasury amounted to £100 million in tax revenues alone. So this is a mammoth figure if we are talking about early 18th century. Okay, so £100 million at that point in time in tax revenue in the subcontinent's treasury. That's huge. And the third point that the economic historian mentioned was when British left India, India's share of world economy dropped to just above 3%. Okay, so from 27%, from 23% of global GDP share to just above 3%, or you can say 3%, India. And when I say India, it means the current day India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Okay, so these three countries today equate to India back at that point in time, and they had a huge share of 27% at one point in the history. And in 1947, around 1947, all of these three countries combined today had a share of just above 3%. Okay, and during this particular time of 200 years of British rule in India, one thing I would like to mention here, one of my observation, is that as the subcontinent's GDP share was going down over the period of time, over this period of 200 years, the British's GDP share of the whole world economy was going, was skyrocketing, and one year after year, since you can say 1757 to 1947. Okay, and after that, now there have been just a few basic credentials regarding East India Company mentioned by author in this book at this particular point in this subchapter. I'm going to call it in the East India Company EIC in short. Okay, so EIC was incorporated by royal charter from the Queen Elizabeth I in the year 1600. Okay, so I mean that's way back, and when okay, so it's going to come later in this particular video. Let me not just spoil the arrangement. Okay, so the exact nature, what was decided of this particular company while it was being incorporated by the Royal Charter by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, was the exact nature of this company was to trade in silk, spices, and other profitable Indian commodities. So this is the nature of business of this particular company. Okay, so all commodities which are of Indian origin, but especially silk and spices and other profitable Indian commodities. So when EIC needed to further spread its business, it initially established outposts, okay, around its business premises, which it named as factories and called it factories in front of the then Emperor Jahangir, in which they established, how the India's shores are, coastal lines are, and they just established them on those particular coasts. And most of them were based in Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay, which basically intended to protect its business premises. So, what was the reasoning of then British ambassador in front of the Emperor Jahangir was uh, the logic of building these factories, which were basically outposts, was to protect the EIC's own interests, business interests, the EIC's business premises that were established in these major cities like Calcutta, Madras, Bombay, and to protect their personnel, staff, and to protect its business interest. And later on, as the time moved forward, they hired the local people as their soldiers of those who were responsible to to hold those outposts on behalf of the EIC. And one more interesting point written regarding EIC in its charter when it was being incorporated, as per the author, was that EIC was granted the right to wage war on its enemies and in order to achieve its goals. Okay, so this is quite interesting that in its charter, uh, when I'm saying that in its charter, it means that it was approved by the British government of that time and Her Majesty and all of the officials of that time, particularly. Okay, so it had been written in the EIC's charter that it has the permission on behalf of from the British government of that time to wage war in case it's having issues in achieving its goals, its targets, or someone else is trying to hurt its interests, business interests. Okay, so this was quite a bold clause in its charter. And over a period of time moving forward, these factories and outposts got bigger and they got much fortified. They got much quite of a fort like in architecture around them. Okay, and more soldiers were got recruited by the EIC under the garb of protecting business interests of EIC. Okay, and who was obviously the first person who who made all these negotiations on behalf of the British government with in the court of Jahangir was Sir Thomas Roe, and the first permission granted by Mughal Emperor Jahangir to establish its outpost in the subcontinent was the year 1615. Okay, so in the year 1615, the first outpost or factory got established in the subcontinent. Okay, and later on, these particular outposts got huge deployments of military personnel, got huge recruitments from their particular from every location. For example, if an outpost is being established in Calcutta, then the EIC is going to recruit people from Calcutta and its whereabouts. And similar case for Bombay, and similar case for Surat, and similar case for Madras. Okay. And one more problem was that in some of the areas where they recruited these soldiers, these local people as soldiers, as protectors of their business premises, these areas had some, regional political tensions also going on in those areas, due to which people got recruited by the British. And later on, these people who got recruited by the British also used that power to assert themselves on their rival tribes, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these were also the things that we are going to discuss later in this series. And I think that's all for this particular video. We have hit the 10-minute mark already. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.